Dr. Candice Wallace.
Hey.
Hey. So glad we get an opportunity to do this, to sit here and talk, converse a little bit about the Promise program.
Yes.
First, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm originally from Michigan, have my PhD in social psychology. The focus of my work has been on culture and the role that culture plays in African American experiences. So I've been very, very interested in sort of our psychological outcomes as African Americans as it relates to being African American.
Very good. How long have you been here at Hampton?
This is my 7th year.
Okay.
Seems like it was just yesterday that I started working here, but my 7th year. I really enjoy it. Enjoy working with students and the faculty. I've had a really good experience.
And I remember when you came in, so I was chair of the Department of Psychology.
You were.
And I was so excited that we were able to get you because you're smart.
Oh, thank you.
Good people.
I try to be.
So, how did you get involved with the Promise program? Tell us your story about how you became involved.
How I became involved. So as you said, I've been here what seems like a while, but hasn't been a while. So it was my first year as faculty, right out of grad school. Dr. Harvey had sort of charged the departments of psychology and sociology with creating a violence prevention program. And because of my interest in culture and the experience of being African American, as well as my doctoral work on social rejection, you asked me to help write the grant for the Promise program. And so that's how I initially got involved, was in the grant writing.
Yeah. Tell everyone a little bit about our process, okay? So how did we come to develop this program? What were some things we did?
It's so funny because asking now, I'm like, I have no idea how we came up with this idea, but I really kind of do. We were, investigating some of the existing violence prevention programs and really more so the research on violence and aggression. We both, you and I, as well as Dr. McGee, have some interest in African American cultural experiences. And so we really sort of married what the research was saying about aggression and what we already know about aggression and violence with our interest in culture and having a culture-based approach.
Right. Good. And so we decided to develop this curriculum.
Yes.
And so a lot of the program is this curriculum, really trying to change minds, right? Tell us some about the curriculum.
Right. So in investigating sort of how would we go about developing a violence prevention program, we looked at evidence-based models. So used several of the well-known databases for violence prevention programs to explore what are people doing, what have people already done, but also considering that these programs that existed weren't exactly working for African Americans specifically and African American males. So we took a very, very in-depth analysis of the existing programs and determined that what was missing was this culture-based and strength-based model in what's been done already. And so moving with sort of these existing programs already in mind and what they've done that has been done well, we thought about what is unique and special about being African Americans that we can add to what has already been done and sort of build on what has already been done.
Can you speak a little bit about those factors that we decided to focus on in our curricula that we felt if we could address issues around those factors, then we could really help these young men to be their best selves?
Absolutely. So the research on African Americans in generally has shown that there are several key factors that are associated with resiliency in African Americans, and these factors have been associated with a whole host of positive outcomes for African Americans, everything from educational outcomes to physical health outcomes, relationship outcomes have all been associated with these factors. Those factors that seem to be the most prominent are racial identity, which refers to how important being African American is to you and how well or how much you incorporate your sense of African American identity in your overall self-concept. Communalism, which refers to the degree to which you feel a part of both your immediate community, so your friends, your family, your neighborhood, as well as the broader African American community and how important that is to you. Religiosity and spirituality. Most social movements that have been led by African Americans have had a religious and spiritual component. They've been led by religious and spiritual leaders. And so in order to stay strong, African Americans have often held very close to their heart a sense of religiosity and spirituality. And then positive family dynamics. So often we hear in the research the breakdown of the African American family, but there hasn't been as much focus on how African American families function well, and some of the dynamics within the African American family, such as having extended family members or fictive kin that make you especially strong, that have made our families strong. And so we considered those factors in developing our curriculum and really centered our curriculum around those factors.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. And we even, as we went along and we continued to meet with people in the community, because we felt always that it was important that this also be community-based, and we heard from the participants and the parents and activists in the community. There are a few other variables that they identified that were important that we started to include. Do you want to speak to those?
Sure, absolutely. So as you said, we had some preliminary focus groups and things when we were developing the program, and started to hear certain themes come from community activists, community leaders, as well as parents. Themes that we hadn't considered necessarily before as researchers, and other researchers haven't conducted a lot of studies on. And some of those themes were things like respect, and sort of the definition of respect for the population that we are serving in this program, African American males, and how they might conceive respect differently than we would think one would think of as respect, a sense of mattering or sense of importance. That's sort of a variable that has been looked at in other domains, but not necessarily as it relates to violence. And so we looked at this sense of feeling important, or that you matter to other people around you, a sense of hope and purpose. There's been some research on hopelessness, but not the opposite of that, which is when you feel like you have hope or a sense of purpose for your future, how does that propel you to do positive things? And so we incorporated some of those variables as well.
So good. And you're so, I love the way you express yourself.
Oh, thank you.
Also, as we said, when we designed this,
Right.
we knew that this would be a learning process for us. We could look at the research, we could look at these evidence-based programs and get information about, how we developed this program. But we would also expected that we would need to refine, develop the program over these 4 years. And we're in our final year of it with funding for this program, but we're definitely looking to continue it. And there are a few other things that we have identified that are important to these participants that we wanted to include. So we've recently started to develop a few additional modules or other content for modules that are already there. Would you speak to those a bit?
Sure. So in this last year of revisions, as you said, we pointed out some things that we think are important for African American males. Those things are interactions with the police. We know from the media and things like that this has been a point of contention. It seems like getting more recently getting more attention, but we know that it has been an issue for a long time within the African American community, our interactions with the police. And so we decided to develop a module that really provides our participants with the skills and ability and awareness of how they should interact with the police and what they should expect from law enforcement. We also thought that one factor that has been missing in a lot of the violence research is this focus on mental health and coping. and particularly coping with trauma. A lot of the African American males we work with have had traumatic experiences that sometimes they don't even know are traumatic experiences because they just pick up and keep moving. And we recognize that we need to address some of those issues that they have dealt with, but also provide them with the skills to be their best even in the midst of the trauma. And so we've been working on modules to help with that. And then we finally added an additional module that looks at romantic relationships. Our population that we're serving is 12 to 25, and so they're just starting to think girls are attractive at this age, or some of them have been in relationships and have children and things like that. And we know that African American women a lot of times have been the backbone of the community, and it's been important for African American males to know how to interact with women in a way that's respectful and that sees women positively. And so we've developed some modules to talk about how you should interact in relationships and really how to see women.
Really good, that's good. So as I just said too, you know, this is our last year funding from the National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Minority Health Disparities.
Right.
We're part of the Minority Men's Health Initiative here at Hampton. And we've been so successful in the development. It's been a lot of work that we've all put into this. And where would you like to see this ideally? Where would you like to see this program go from here? What else would you like to see happen?
Okay. I think I have two main focuses I would like to see. The first is that I really would like to see more broader application. We've been working largely at Hampton, on Hampton's campus, or at Howard at 2 alternative schools there, but I really would like to see this program be implemented in much more broader context. So the school system, the juvenile justice system, and other places where we know that at-risk African American males are most likely to be. I'd like to see more implementation of our specific approach and program in those spaces. So that's the first thing I would like to see. The second thing that I would like to see is that more individuals who are conducting this type of research pay attention to and incorporate culture in their approach. And it doesn't just have to be African American culture, which we've been focused on, but we know, for instance, with Hispanics, that there's some cultural elements there too, that if you're implementing a violence prevention or violence-based program with them, that you might want to be aware of. So more research and evidence-based programs that really take a good look at what are the cultural strengths of the community that you're serving.
That's really good. And while we've been focused on African American males because we know they're the most at risk, we know that this is really a public health issue for African American males because the leading cause of death, or a leading cause of death for African American males from birth through 44, I think it is, is through violence. So we know that this is a really important issue for this community. However, we know that this is something that all communities are challenged with, and so we would want to look, and I think it's been exciting to see that this curriculum could be adapted for women. You know, it can be adapted for other ethnic, racial groups. So that I think we see some promise in that as well.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the topics that we talk about in our curriculum, we talk about from what we perceive as a male perspective, but they're important topics for people, like how to communicate well with others and the importance of your culture. Those sorts of things matter for everyone, not just African American males. So we can definitely adapt the work that we've been doing in the curriculum that we've designed to several different populations.
Good. Well, is there anything else that you would like to say, Dr. Wallace?
Just that it has been a pleasure. I'm a researcher at heart, and a lot of psychological research in my research has been laboratory-based, where we collect undergraduate students and get their opinions. And so to have the ability to do work that is translational, where I get to do the research side of it, but also to work with the population that my research is targeting, and that really allows me to see what I'm doing is having an effect, has been invaluable experience, an invaluable experience.
And it's been an invaluable experience for me to work with you.
Oh, thanks. You as well. You as well.
Thank you so much.